Hi guys, Oliver here and welcome to my channel. Our channel. No, it's my channel. Well, I thought it's our channel. No, it's my channel, and by the way, I'm filming. Okay. You've all seen these super cool images of objects that seem to float, magically hovering and levitating up in the air. Are you a magician? No, I'm not a magician. I'm a photographer, and if you're just watching without disturbing, you are about to find out how it works. You are a magician. Guys, bear with me a second. I really need to deal with that guy first. Well, generally that guy is a quite alright bloke, but sometimes he's just a pain in the backside. Of course it's not magic, but unless you want to throw your props countless times up in the air, risk dropping them and breaking them, then of course it is an illusion. That illusion requires a bit of time, patience to set the scene up, and Photoshop. And we're going through all these steps one after another. My idea today was, I still have that little Panasonic camera here, and I want to use that to create the illusion of it floating. We're also going to use a few more other props to complete the scene. And before we going into the technical details, let me show how I set my scenery up here first. Good. What I'm using here is just a stand of my backdrop plus a light stand there in the background, and I even have the tip of my cue, and why I'm going to show you in a second. I am photographing everything on a tripod with my Canon 5D Mark III, and we are going to use the 50mm 1.4 lens. A lens I do not really particularly like, but as you see here, it's pretty fast and wide open. The reason why I do not use that lens too often, even though it's very fast, it's also very soft, and on a crop camera I normally don't use it at all, but it can perform quite alright on the full frame, and I want to use that softness to magnify that illusional effect. So, few items. First of all, we have some thread. Stole it from my girl from the sewing equipment. Make sure it is strong enough to really hold the item you want to put up in the air. If it breaks, it drops down on the floor, it's not worth it. So, what I did here, have a few strings, one on this side, one on this side. That one is holding the strap up here. And the reason why I have that light stand with another prop here in the back is to hold the strap back. It gives me already a sense of depth. So, that's the scenery. We're about to take our first photograph. This is how it looks from the side. As you see, the distance between my lens and my subject is just about, well, not quite an arm length, it's about 60 centimeters, which means we are not working at the minimum focus distance of that lens, which would be a little closer. I gave it intentionally a little more, because even though I stopped it down now to f2.2, what on ISO 100 gives us a 400th of a second, it's enough background blur for what we want to do today. So what I'm going to do now, I'm taking the first shots, and I will choose different focus points because the depth of field is pretty shallow. I'm going to show you in a second, and out of these I will later on use the ones I like the most. This is what we have. Now I'm going to change just one quick setting of my camera, and we're adding a little remote control, because now I am the one who is getting into the scene, and I'll show you what I want to do. Before I do that, one important point, I almost forgot it, because we are now happy with our focus where we want it, and I switch the lens to manual focus. So I'm not going to change anything in the settings, just I'm adding myself into the frame, and because I'm generally not the coolest person ever, that makes me look cooler, doesn't it? So I hope you can see what I'm doing now. My hand will be underneath. I myself give plenty of place, and I try to give that illusion that that camera will hover above my hand. Give it plenty of shots, try around different positions. Let's check that out. Yeah, nice and blurred. This is exactly the effect I wanted. What I'm going to do now, I am taking the precious little camera off, and I'm going to add a few props to the scene. Good. The first prop of the day is that tiny little memory card here. It's going to give me a headache, that's for sure, because as you can see, it's windy, everything is moving, everything is floating. But very important, I'm still at the same focus point on my lens, and I have not changed the distance between camera and the object. And I'm simply going to take a few photos when it decides to come back in the frame. By the way, what I did here is just blue tack on the backside of my memory card. And let's hope it works. Again, not changing camera position, nothing at all. Wow, now it's spinning. Come on, wind, ease. That should be enough. And I'm taking the memory card off and put the next prop on. What I have now is that little Canon remote here. Same thing, just a bit of blue tack on the backside. And again, no change in camera position, nothing at all. That makes my head spin. And that can happen too. Give it a go. And what I also do, I just change the position a bit, going further to the right. And that's because I really want to have it relative to the background in different positions. No worries, we're not using all of these images, I will pick the best of them. That should be sufficient, and I'm changing to one more prop, but this time I won't use blue tack to attach it. Back in a moment. Good, and the final prop I would like to add to the scene is just an extension tube, because it has nothing in it. It was easy to attach on a piece of string. As you can see, it's spinning already, and I'm taking several shots of this one as well. Again, in different positions and different heights, and then we should be done with our props. And now to finish the scene, just to have another opportunity, maybe without the camera, but just to give the illusion that I would throw these props towards the camera. I'm taking a few more of myself, something I really don't like, but it needs to be done. And this is it, packing together, and we're heading towards Photoshop. Alright, part one of the fun is done. I've cleaned up the mess of my garden, and we're back on the computer, transferred everything, and already made a pick of my best shots in Lightroom, plus some basic adjustments. Before we're jumping into Photoshop, one quick word. For some of the techniques we're using today, we're using layers and layer masks. I assume you are familiar with that technique. If not, not a problem, but then I recommend watching this video first, because here I explain really the basics in detail, plus a few other things, and that's always helpful to know. Okay, so everything prepared. Let's start the action in Photoshop. Some of the techniques we are using are rather simple. Good, what we see here is the first image. And the easiest technique we're using. What we see is a little Lumix hanging on strings, myself in the background. All we need to do in that image to get the first result is removing the strings. To do that, we are using a few different Photoshop tools. What I usually do, first of all, I duplicate my base layer. I am not working in the base layer, always work in a copy, and yeah, that just makes things way more easy for me. The first tool we're talking about is the spot healing tool. Let's see, we're clicking on that, but yeah, it doesn't really matter, as you see, so it's not really made for that. A better pick would be the next one, which is the healing brush. The healing brush requires that you pick a base and then paint over it, but you see here it doesn't really always work. It works way better than the spot healing brush, but it's still not what we want. Our tool of choice today is the patch tool, and how it works, you simply select a part you want to patch, choose it from a similar place, and boom, it's gone. You gotta be very careful. If you are selecting too much, then very often it leads to weird results. Sometimes it works, not often. Yeah, you see we have some strange halos around here where it couldn't pick it properly. So my suggestion is really you do that all in small bits, section by section. Carefully pick a place you want to remove it, replace it with, like this, and work your way through bit by bit. This is what I'm doing now. Yeah, that is gone, and when we're lucky this will work as well. Quite alright. So we're working our way through our image. So here's one on the side where I was holding the strap back. Yeah, that's okay. Maybe from the top. No, top wasn't too good. Let's choose maybe from here. Let's see what happens. Yeah, that's way better. And yeah, let me just speed that up a little bit for you, because it's going to be boring otherwise. When we're done with that part, there are a few little corrections left, which is where I have attached the strings. So one, for example, is here, and to do that we're simply using our clone stamp. Don't make it too big, and we're choosing first, by holding the Alt key, a place where we want to pick our selection from, and then we carefully paint over these areas where we need to clone out. Same here. Yeah, I think that will do. We have a little more here. The thing is, the more time you invest in that part of the job, the more accurate your work, the better your results will be. I mean, it's quite obvious, but don't rush. Do it properly, and the results will get better. I think we're good for now. All left to do in that very first image is you do your adjustments, color, contrast, curves. Yeah, and basically we're done with the very first image. That's it. I've already prepared a few more of these. That's me again. Then we have the guy in the red t-shirt. You remember the other one? And yeah, I gave him a chance to throw my camera up in the air too. Good, but then we have a little more difficult things to do, because that is really easy. And you remember that I had all these separate props. There was the memory card, there was my extension tube, my remote shutter, and I really want to bring them back into the image. I want to put them all together. Good, here we are using a different technique. What I have here is my layer on top is the image of a memory card I want to include, but underneath that I have a second image of the same memory card, but if you check that out, only the string, which is the part we want to remove, is in a different position. And now you see why it was so important for me not to move the camera in between, and also not to change the focus, because what stays the same in both images is the background. And simple trick, so now we're having two layers, and I'm adding a layer mask on my top layer, which is the one where I want to remove the string. Taken my brush tool, make that a little smaller, and with the black color we're simply painting over that string, but make sure you're really painting in the layer mask, not in the layer itself. And magically that string disappears. So here it's gone. So all I'm doing is painting with black in my layer mask, and what it does, if you are familiar with layers and masks, you know it's hiding the parts where we are painting in with a black color. Good. When I go back to full size, if I now disable that layer mask, you see the string is back. I enable the layer mask and it's gone. And all we've done by alt click into the layer mask, these black bits, this is what we have painted in. Nothing more. Really nice, smooth and easy. But this is still not enough, because out of this image we do not want to move the complete image into our composite we're creating later on. We only want to use that little SD card, because I do not know in what position I want to have that. I cannot deal with that backdrop now. The backdrop has done its job, we don't need it anymore. So I am flattening my image back to only one layer, and now we need to select our little SD card here. Good. Many people start drawing paths around. I want to do it slightly different, so I am trying to use my quick selection tool and see how accurate it will be. So here's a little glitch, didn't get that, so I'm trying to add this bit of my SD card. Almost done. What we can do here is we can select a mask using the refine brush, and we're trying to make the edges, the corners around a bit smoother just by painting over it, over the edges. Looks pretty good to me. We have our selection here, but now, because I only want to have what's selected visible, I am simply adding a white layer mask. And what happens here is everything out of the selection is invisible. That's exactly what we want, because we only need not the entire image, just a bit out of it. We're cropping into it. That's enough, and we are done. You remember right at the end of the action I took a few images of myself without a camera or anything else in front, and this is one of them. What we need to do now is we are grabbing with the move tool, we are grabbing that part of our SD card, move it onto that image and drop it in here. And here is our SD card, and we can freely move it around wherever we want. Simple, isn't it? What I've also done, not only the SD card, I've already prepared the camera itself. I must admit that was a little more work, because with different paths here and that strap and different focal points, but I prepared that already. Here is the extension tube, and here is the little remote control. And I've also prepared this image here. All that's missing is our SD card, so move it into the final one and drop it somewhere. So, and here are our items. It's all layers, and they still contain layer masks. So let's say I click on the camera, the right layer is already selected, and I can freely move that around wherever I want it. And I said when we were downstairs, I want to give the illusion that we are throwing these bits around and up in the air. You can make way more modifications to make the illusion complete. So for example, that shutter release in relation to the extension tube looks rather big. Let's click onto the shutter release. The layer is selected, and by Command T we activate a free transform. And here I can modify the size. Keep the proportions by holding the Shift key. Just make that a bit smaller. Happy with that. Move it further in here, and the extension tube, yeah, leave it where it is. we're choosing the SD card, free transform, and making it bigger, it would give us the illusion that it is closer to us. So by the different size of the relation of the sizes of the object in the image, you can create that illusion of depth even more. And I think our illusion is complete. So as you see, it is not magic at all. What we have, an idea, the execution, let me summarize. We need a camera that can manually focus. You may have a compact camera that is not capable of doing that. It's gonna be a little tricky, so manual focus would be great. So after the first initial shot, you do not change the focus anymore. So the entire frame stays the same. And we're just placing our objects in the same distance without changing the distance to the camera. That's because of the focus. And taking a variety of shots. You've seen different techniques. Either you do it in a single frame, all you have to do is removing the little strings. The smaller and the better color matching they are, the less work you have. I showed you different techniques. Either you're simply cloning them out or you're using layers and layer masks. And finally you create your selections, and like this one here, you compose all the items together. And that's pretty much it. So you can play around with these results as you want. And even more important, if you have these layers here still in Photoshop, you can place and move the items, and you can arrange your scene the way you want it. Before we come to the end, there is one more thing that obviously works with any object. Some objects are simply too big, too heavy to hang them from a frame. Let's take me for example. I could simply not be hanging from that frame. So if I would want to make myself levitate, I would use a chair, for example. Sit on it, lie on it, whatever. And to remove that chair out of the image, the only thing we haven't done today is I would remove myself and the chair out of the frame without changing focus, without changing the camera position, taking an image of the background. And the way I removed the string from the SD card, it's pretty much the same. It works exactly the same. You're taking the chair, which you don't want, out of the image by using a second layer and a layer mask. That's everything. And that's it for today. Hope you liked it. If so, hit like, leave me a comment, don't forget to subscribe. Hope you got inspired. Show me your levitation images. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.